Hi, welcome back to the Southern St. Charles branch. Some of you have asked about the fascia on my layout, so I thought I'd take a few minutes and let you see what that's all about. A lot of people look at fascia and think it should be blank or very clean. And I can appreciate that approach, but I take a little bit different approach. I view fascia as basically the primary way that an operator is going to understand and interface with the layout. And my undergraduate degree is in human factors engineering, which is essentially the study of how people make decisions based on the information that's presented to them. So it has to do with things like controls and diagrams. So I bring some of that to my layout, and that informs my approach. The first thing you'll notice is it's black. Now I choose black fascia for a few different reasons. First off, I appreciate the way it looks kind of like a museum display. Secondly, I model the Southern Railway, and I model coal, so black just seems very appropriate. The third thing is more practical, and that is black paint is easy to find, it's easy to match. It's easy to match with a printer and labels, and it's also very easy to touch up with a Sharpie. So when you look around the fascia, the first thing you'll probably notice is all these lines. So the lines are actually the track chart for this area of the Appalachia Division on the fascia. The wide line represents the main line, and the narrower lines represent spurs and sidings along the way. Each track in each town has its own unique name. Main line is 0, and the tracks are numbered 1 to N, starting with closest to the aisle here. Also, where the tracks come together and there's a switch, you'll see one of the lines goes straight through and one of the lines is angled. And this indicates which one is the normal route and which one is the diverging route. When you get to a town, you'll see the town name, in this case Kimmer Jim, is basically the like a Southern Station sign. So I looked at Southern Station signs and tried to make my station names match for all the different towns, like Turner Siding and St. Charles. One exception is the L&N staging, which was in Pennington on L&N trackage. So I represented Pennington with an L&N looking station sign. Going back up here to Kemmer Gym, every town has a timetable direction associated with it. That's important on the St. Charles branch because it's not always right equals west and left equals east. In my case, at the end of the branches, when the branches split, a lot of times west is the end of the branch. In this case, west is to the right, but here's where they split, and moving this way on the Straight Creek branch, west is going to be to the left. So it's important to let crews know what's going on there. You'll also see, in addition to the switch controls, I've got some additional controls on the layout. One are these semaphores. So in the case of the Southern St. Charles branch, they had 3 branches that I modeled. They were protected by these dwarf semaphores. And the instructions for the crews in the timetable basically said, when you're on the branch, unlock the semaphore and set it to red or stop. And then that'll let other crews know that you're up there. So my crews all have keys for these locks. They'll come in, they'll unlock, and they will set the semaphore to the stop position. So you'll see this turn from green to red. And if you could see that semaphore there in the middle of the screen, it went from an up position to the stop position. That protects the crews while they're up here. I've also got labels here with a stop sign. That indicates to the crew that there is something that you need to do before you pass this point. In this case, set the semaphores. Other instructions might include yard limits. So here's a yard limit sign. It's basically concurrent with the semaphore because to the left is going to be semaphore controlled, to the right is going to be yard limit controlled. And so it's a reminder to the crews that they should watch out for the trains. You'll also see things like whistle posts. So that's for crossings like you'll see here. And the road name and creek names are also on the fascia, just to give people a sense of where they are in space and time and that they are in a real place in space and time. You also see handbrake controls. These are oriented with the track that they affect. So in the case of the main lines, I don't like to have the little brushes sticking up if you've seen some of my earlier posts. But they can hold their train by flipping the handbrake to up You also see a nice bright orange indicator pops up, warning the crew that they are about to run over something that might derail them, which will indeed happen with these handbrakes. I've also got controls for the fusees for non-protected crossings. Now, in reality, if a crew needed to do switching across an unprotected crossing like this, they would basically either set out a flagman or they would drop a fusee or two fusees, one on either side of the road. You'll see pushing that button lit a fusee, and in a few seconds you'll see the second fusee come on the other side of the road. And those are set on a 10-minute timer, which is the lifetime of a fusee. So 10 minutes of fast clock time, and that will burn out, and the crew will have to relight it again. Just something fun for the crews to play around with. It's realistic. Going back to Camera Gym, you'll see that the fascia also gives the crews everything they need to set out and pick up cars. So these white rectangles indicate different spots that they need to set out or pick up cars. In this case, Camera Gym Tipple has two tracks. So they've got the load tracks to the left based on gravity, and the empty tracks to the right where the crews need to spot their cars. The tipples are more complex and have more tracks. You'll also see that the Kimmer Gym number 2 here is not a permanent label. It's just a little piece of paper that sits in this pocket. I want to model multiple eras, and so I needed a way to have some of the industry names be able to change over time. That's how I do that. Also got these clips on the fascia for set out instructions for the crews so they can see how many hoppers to put where based on the foreman's instructions that they would get when they would show up to a real tipple in real life. Let's see, a couple of the controls. One are silver toggles. These are only on tracks where locomotives are going to be left between trains. So in this case, I've got the house track and the engine track where the locals sit. And I didn't want crews to have to understand how to mute their locomotives. And I also wanted a way to protect the locomotives from running away after the crews leave their throttles and might leave it at throttle step 1 or something and have them creep. So they can just use these toggles to turn the tracks on when they need to move a train. Then once they park their train, they can just simply turn the toggles off, and that'll kill power to just that one track. Another feature of the fascia is it helps crews know where to go next. So in this case, you'll see the letter C there, where the track goes into hidden trackage. So just like a track plan in a magazine, you would follow that letter C, try to find the corresponding letter C. In that case, it's down here as you enter St. Charles. These letters are going to be everywhere the track goes into hidden staging. Now, one of the fun things that I've done with the fascia is these safety slogans. If you work on a railroad, you see safety slogans all the time. Back in the day on caboose steps and inside cabooses or on the walls of shops, just anything to remind you to be safe out there. So I went through all the pictures of Southern cabooses that I could find, and they've got these nice safety slogans on their steps, and I've taken a few of them and just used a stencil and a yellow paint marker to put a few of them on the layout in strategic places just to be fun. So that really is the fascia controls on the Southern St. Charles branch and how I use the fascia to both help the operators figure out how to interact with the layout as well as to give them their context in space and time. For example, on the upper valance, I've got things like pictures of the Kimmer Gym tipple, the actual Kimmer Gym tipple. It lets you know that this mock-up of the real one is my version of something in reality. The final thing I'll point out, just in case you get stuck operating the layout, are these little QR codes. So operators, if they want a reminder of how to work something or the jobs that they're required to do, or if they get stuck and want some pro tips, they can get to those via these operations questions. That way I don't have to be around and I don't have to be telling them pro tips if they don't want to hear them, but they're available to them if they need them. So I hope you've enjoyed this look at the fascia on the Southern St. Charles branch, how things are done and why things are done, and I hope it gives you some ideas of things that you might want to bring in to your own layout. So thanks for joining me.